Hi, Janeite, and welcome to episode 13 of the What the Austen podcast. And this is also part 2 of the Harry Potter times Jane Austen episode series. So last month, me and Caily were on and we covered Pride and Prejudice and Sensibility. We matched Elizabeth Bennet, Marianne Dashwood, and Eleanor Dashwood into their Hogwarts houses. And then this episode, we're continuing on and we're going to be looking at Emma, Mansfield Park, Northanger Abbey, and Persuasion. So Caily's back. So hi, Caily.
Thanks for having me back. I so enjoyed recording the last episode with you. As you know, Jane Austen and the Harry Potter series, two of my ultimate loves of my life. So this is amazing being able to do this with you.
I love that. So we really recommend listening to part 1 if you haven't already, just because we go into a lot of depth about the houses. And also it's just good to see how we begin to sort people. So like episode 1, we're going to have a primary house for the heroines, but also a secondary house. And as we talked about in the first episode, there's a lot of like hidden parts of people's personalities that really come up in what we think is their secondary house. So that's why and I feel like that's where we have the most debate. Isn't that right, Caily?
Yes, I feel like we really were in agreement on all characters' primary houses so far, but when it came to the secondary house, we'd have a really interesting debate on the characteristics. And yeah,
absolutely. It's definitely, there's more there. There's more to them than first meets the eye. So yeah, I really recommend going over to that episode. But today we are going to do, a brief summary of the houses before we start. And then, we'll get into the nitty gritty of the content. So before we start, me and Caily have some exciting news though. Caily is going to be coming to the UK to visit, which is super exciting.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. If I can sort everything out with my passport update, I'll be able to visit you, Izzy, and we'll actually be able to meet in person for the first time. Because Izzy and I started our accounts around the same time during COVID and became friends over Instagram, and then met virtually and started recording the podcast episodes. But it'll be the first time that we'll actually get to meet face to face and do some Jane Austen related exploring. We might go to Chawton or the Chatsworth, Pemberley House. There are so many things that we could do together, and I'm just very excited.
I know, I'm so excited. It's so weird. Like sometimes I forget. I mean, I work virtually and that's kind of what I do for a living, guys. But I feel like I know you so well. It's weird that we've never met in person.
I know. I talk about you all the time. I'll say my friend Izzy. And yeah, I feel like we have met in person because we've done so much together and been through so much with the podcast. So I'm glad it's finally happening.
I know, I'm so excited. I can't wait. So well, this is why you guys, you should follow us over on Instagram because I like share all this kind of thing over there. So definitely come hit me up and you can see what's going on behind the scenes. And you'll be able to see when Caily comes and visits because I'm sure I'll share bits about that. So Caily, do you want to kick things off saying a little bit about the houses? We're just going to do a brief summary. Do you want to start with Gryffindor?
Sure. So again, we go into this in a lot more detail in the first episode, but we thought we'd just do a brief summary. So for Gryffindor, some core strengths are bravery, daring. They tend to be the protector of the underdog. And then weaknesses are an impulsivity, black and white thinking. Some key characters from Gryffindor are Dumbledore, Sirius Black, and Molly Weasley. And then Ravenclaw, we said that some strengths are intelligence and wit, and then weaknesses are a tunnel vision that keeps them separate from reality. They're a little bit insular. Some key characters from Ravenclaw are Cho Chang, Gilderoy Lockhart,
Luna
Lovegood. Yeah. Some strengths of Hufflepuff are they're loyal, hardworking, patient, and weaknesses are they can be indecisive and passive.
I was just going to say about Hufflepuffs as well, is I think a lot of people, like there's a specific quote that I remember reading which said, saying that they're like a load of old duffers, which duffers means like they're kind of stupid or unintelligent. And I know in like the first episode, Caily, you were saying about how Slytherins have a really bad rep, but I think Hufflepuffs again are a house that are kind of underappreciated or misunderstood in many ways, because I don't think Hufflepuffs are like unintelligent. There's some really smart Hufflepuffs. I mean, if you look at Newt in the Fantastic Beasts series, he's like an expert on magical creatures. And also Cedric Diggory is said to be really smart as well. So yeah, I feel like they're the other misunderstood house a lot of the time.
Absolutely. And I read an article that said that Hufflepuffs would actually be the best suited to leadership because they can be so calm and rational and hear everyone's perspective without being impulsive or exploding, but that they don't seek out those positions of power because they're conflict averse. They don't like to rock the boat. And they can, because of that indecisiveness. But I thought that was very interesting that they might be the most suited to those positions of power.
Yeah, I can see it. I can imagine that absolutely being the case.
And yeah, so for Slytherin, some strengths are that they are very ambitious and shrewd and loyal to their pack. And then weaknesses are they can be a bit power hungry and calculated. And then some key characters in Slytherin are Lucius Malfoy, obviously his son Draco, Bellatrix Lestrange, and Horace Slughorn, which I find an interesting one.
Yes, I always forget about him, but that is actually such a good that's such a good one to remember. It's a bit like Lockhart and Ravenclaw. Like they're ones that you forget because they don't have those standout qualities of the house that you're like, But yeah, I love it when there's like those people that you don't think fit and they do fit.
Exactly. Yeah, he doesn't have the exaggerated power hungry traits, but when you analyze his character, you totally see that he's a Slytherin, that social climbing and
yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. That's so good. So I think something that would be valuable is for us to just do a quick recap on where we placed Elizabeth, Marianne, and Eleanor, because I mean, obviously, if you want to know the details, you'll have to listen to the episode, but it's good to just remember where we place them just to see how they compare to the heroines that we're going to do today. So for Elizabeth Bennet, we placed her in Gryffindor was her main house, and then Ravenclaw was her secondary house.
Yes. Yeah, we were pretty torn actually, because we think she has so many of Gryffindor and Ravenclaw qualities. And we recognize the fact that she's extremely witty and she has a very Ravenclaw relationship with her father. But also we felt like Gryffindor won out in the end because of her steadfast courage, especially standing up to Mr. Darcy, Mr. Collins, and challenging Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She really had that sense of bravery and then a sense of honor. And she was a protector of her sister. Anyway, at the end of the day, we really thought it was neck and neck, but we landed on Gryffindor.
Yeah, I think one of the key quotes that we pointed out was that the one about her stubbornness and how that she's like, she always rises when people try to intimidate her. And I think that quote alone is just very much sums up her Gryffindor side.
Absolutely. My courage always rises with every attempt to intimidate me.
Yeah, exactly. That's just Gryffindor through and through. So yeah, that was Elizabeth. And then we did Marianne Dashwood from Sensibility, and we had her primary house being Gryffindor. And then we were conflicted on her secondary house. So I was kind of driven more towards Slytherin, and Caily was driven more towards Ravenclaw. So we didn't agree on a secondary house for Marianne.
I loved that conversation. I thought that was so interesting. We decided that she had a lot of the immature qualities of a Gryffindor, right? She's impulsive and impetuous. But then you talked about her Slytherin traits, which I thought it was a really good discussion. You noticed how she's a bit snobby and she thought that she was better than other people. And I saw the Ravenclaw traits of how she's kind of in her head, in her own world. She loves poetry. She loves music. And so, yeah, we were undecided, but all of those encompass Marianne.
Yes, that was a really good debate. I remember having that one. That was a good one. Okay, great. And the final person that we did in the last episode was Eleanor Dashwood. And we both said that she was the hardest one for us to place into a house. And even like our discussion, we were like, gosh, like where does she fall? It was really interesting, like the details that we got into about Eleanor and like why it was difficult to place her. But the house that we ended up going with was Hufflepuff. And then we said that she was a sort of repressed Gryffindor for her secondary house.
Yes. Yeah. We talked so much about how she's loyal, patient, hardworking, but we felt like Hufflepuff didn't really do justice and fully portray her. And we talked about those Gryffindor qualities, that bravery and steadfastness that she has, that definitely needs to be accounted for in her character.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. So, yeah. So if we get into today's characters and today's novels, super excited to do this again. The first heroine that we're going to discuss today is Emma Woodhouse. I'll just say a little bit about Emma. So Emma's described as being beautiful, wealthy, smart, slightly self-deluded and self-confident. She's a bit narrow-minded. She can be quite meddlesome. She is spoiled, but I think that's a reflection of her sheltered upbringing. I think she can be considered manipulative, but I don't think it's in a malicious way. I think it's more of her arrogance. Jane Austen, in fact, said herself that Emma is a heroine whom no one but myself will much like. I disagree with Jane. I love Emma, but I can understand why she'd feel that way because I know a lot of people really dislike Emma. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like Emma. I think Emma's so much fun, and I think she's different than a lot of the other heroines, which I appreciate. I think besides Marianne, she is the one who also has the most character development and growth, which I really appreciate about her. I think you summed her up really well. I think I wrote she's used to being adored. I think she derives happiness from external circumstances rather than internal accomplishments. She's used to getting her own way. I think Mr. Knightley is a barometer for her. She's a caretaker, right? Even though she's resentful about it, sometimes she caretakes for Mrs. Bates. She takes Harriet under her wing. I think she's prideful. She's socially, well, she's a combination of socially savvy and not, but I think she's highly aware of societal rank. She knows her social status and she knows the status of others. And so I think she can be a bit snobby. There's a scene where she is invited, I think, to the Coles party. And because they're of lower social standing, she goes, oh, I don't think I'm going to accept. And then she only accepts after she finds out that other people of similar social standing go to the party. I find her kind of ambitious too, in her own way. She wants to be the belle of the ball, and she is in her hometown, but she's very threatened by Jane Fairfax because she knows that Jane Fairfax is competition. What else would I say about her? I think she's very playful and loving and fun. There's a lot to like about her. Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
Interesting. Okay, I'm so excited to tell you what my houses are for Emma. Okay. So I've got two. One is Slytherin and the other is Ravenclaw.
Okay. So we have similar to last time. Slytherin, I think, is her primary house. And the secondary, I couldn't decide between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw. I actually ended up leaning toward Gryffindor.
Interesting. Okay, I'll tell you my thoughts on Slytherin and Ravenclaw, and then I'll be interested to see, because I was stuck a little bit between Gryffindor as well, so it'd be really good to hear why you kind of ended up that was your secondary one in the end. So my thoughts on Slytherin is the main house. Totally agree. She's a good leader. She pretty much leads Highbury. She's kind of at the top, like you said, of that social ladder, and she knows it, and she uses it to her advantage, but she also does it she's really good at it. She's good at leading the ball. People look to her for advice. She sits very comfortably in that. And I think that's very much a Slytherin trait, being able to sit comfortably in a leadership position and get people to follow you.
Yeah.
I agree with the ambitious side of it. Absolutely. I think she absolutely is ambitious. And again, I think that can turn into a bit of snobbery. And I think it's slightly mirrored within Slytherin, their favouring purebloods in the house. I think that's quite similar to, like you were saying, with the Coles, and the fact that she thinks that there's, she didn't want to go to the party until people who she thought were kind of a similar standing to her were going. So I think she really does have that, which I think is a bit of a negative trait of Slytherins, but I think she definitely shares that, and that shows in her snobbery. My thoughts on Ravenclaw is because she's very independent-minded, she's quite creative, and she has a lot of original ideas about who should be with who.
That's for sure.
One of my main thoughts of why Ravenclaw is actually, when I did that deeper reading, I was saying to you about the people that are really good at drawing in popularity and fame. People like Lockhart and Cho Chang. Emma's amazing at this. You know what I mean? She is basically like a celebrity in Highbury. She knows how to draw in that attention. She can captivate people. And I think that's very much that kind of unspoken side of Ravenclaws that I think she really captures. And I think that's why that was very much my secondary house for her. There's one more point that I actually literally just came up with there when you were talking about it. She's competitive against other Ravenclaws. And that's very much a Ravenclaw trait, is that they're competitive against other people in their own house. And if you place Jane Fairfax as a Ravenclaw.
Oh, yeah. Jane Fairfax is such a Ravenclaw. So that makes sense. Oh, good point. Oh, man. You're killing it. Okay. Yeah. So I agree with you completely on Slytherin. You summed it up so well. The snobbery, the focus on status, knowing her place and in society, and knowing others' place and looking down on others at times. And I think too, the fact that she's aware that she's supposed to hit it off with Frank Churchill. He is the high status guy that she's supposed to end up with. And I think the fact that she's snobby about Mr. Martin when she calls him only a farmer, won't interact with him. She has this level of cunning. She's a little conniving. She's going to set up this situation with marrying her friend off to Mr. Elton. Okay. So the reason I didn't put her in Ravenclaw is she has all these books that she never reads, and she doesn't really practice piano. I don't see her as, you have a good argument that she is very creative, but I don't see her as much of an intellectual. Like, she's not the person to sit and read and get lost in her own intellectual ideas. I think she cares more about people than about intellectual pursuits. For Gryffindor, I put Gryffindor because she takes care of the underdog. She cares for Harriet. She cares for Mrs. Bates, cares for her father. Gryffindors can be protectors and caretakers. I think she does have the Gryffindor black and white thinking. She's so focused on Mr. Elliot being in love with Harriet that she can't see that he was in love with her the whole time. And she also, because she loves her friend so much, she can't see that Harriet is actually on the same having the same social status as Mr. Martin. So sometimes I think she thinks very rigidly. And I think that's a Gryffindor trait. And I do think another reason I put her as Gryffindor as her secondary house is I think when Mr. Knightley calls her out, she actually has the courage to change. Remember when he calls her out with, I just think other houses, Gryffindors are really willing to change. And when he calls her out for being insensitive, she really takes that to heart. And I don't know. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that really speaks to her character growth. Like you were saying before, the fact that she develops so much, I think is very much something that Gryffindors are really good at, that they can learn from the mistakes and they can develop their character as they go along. I think, well, obviously Harry's a really great example of that. And I think Ron as well. Like, I think even though he's always got that kind of his like hot-headedness and that kind of takes over at times, I think he definitely grows as a character, and he's able to kind of channel his good and bad and see his good side more the more that he grows up, and he actually can value his strengths as well and start feeling less threatened by Harry.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I think Ron's one who will take action. And I think, can we both agree that Emma is not a Hufflepuff at all? She's one of the few heroines. No Hufflepuff.
Oh my God, no. Not in any sense. She's got no Hufflepuff, not even in a little finger. Okay, she's no Hufflepuff.
I think Emma's just one to really take action. And that's a very Gryffindor quality as well. Like, she realizes she loves Mr. Knightley. It hits her like a ton of bricks, and then they get together. You know, there's a lot of action taking. I don't think there's very much indecisiveness there.
I love it. And also that having it under your nose kind of thing. That's a little bit like the Harry and Ginny Weasley situation as well. Like, sometimes it takes time for them to recognize their feelings. That's such a good point. You know, I think you've actually convinced me. I think her secondary house is Gryffindor.
I'm going to stay with that. I think she's a Slytherin and then secondary house Gryffindor, but I loved your point about Ravenclaw, that she is her own person and she's an individual. She was the one who was fine with being like, I don't think I'm going to get married. I remember at first she was like, I'm fine being my own person. I don't have to get married. So I do like that argument, but yeah, I'm sticking with Slytherin and Gryffindor.
I love it. No, I think you convinced me. I think I'm willing to put Ravenclaw aside and go with Gryffindor as well.
This is so much fun.
Okay, so the next heroine on the list is Catherine Morland. So couple of things I like to say about Catherine is a hopeless romantic, an avid reader. She is a bit gullible and naive at times. She's curious, open-minded, and I think she's a little bit spiritual in kind of like more of a, I think that comes with that open-mindedness. I know obviously at the time the kind of dominant religion was Christianity, and she was, you know, Christian, but I think she's got more of an open-mindedness that comes in with like those supernatural elements of the book. And I don't think she's too closed in by society. I think her reading helps with that she's actually really open to like some things that maybe other women her age would not have even thought about. Totally. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Catherine?
Yeah, I think I could be swayed on this one. I saw 3 for her. I think I agree with you. She has a high level of creativity and passion for reading. She gets lost in her imagination. She's intellectually curious. She's the one who wants to explore the Abbey. She's the one who is so excited to go on the adventure, leave her family, go to Bath. I love that quote in Northanger Abbey that says, "If adventures will not befall a young lady in her own village, she must seek them abroad." And I just think that's a great way to describe her. I think she's very trustworthy and loyal. Some people describe her naive, and I think there's some fairness to that, but sometimes I think it's overblown. I think she always kind of sees the character flaws in people. She just doesn't necessarily act on it and set her boundaries at first. I think that she's definitely has Ravenclaw tendencies. And then I could go back and forth between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. I think I landed on Ravenclaw primary and Gryffindor secondary.
Ooh, interesting. So I did Ravenclaw is primary and Hufflepuff secondary.
Okay. Yeah. Why did you choose Hufflepuff?
I think it's her kind nature. She's very much, I don't think she sees status, especially in like comparison to someone like Emma. I really don't think she's fussed by status whatsoever. She wants to be friends with people because they have similar interests, because they're nice people. Like with John, she doesn't like him. She just doesn't. And she doesn't spend time with him because of that. Whereas the Tilneys are of a much higher standing than she is. And I don't think she sees that. I don't think she sees status. That's why I think it's such a shock to her when Henry's father is actually like a fortune hunter after, because I don't think that even would have ever come into her mind, because I think she cares about people so much. She just sees it. I really enjoy this company. I want to spend time with them. I don't think she thinks about it on a how society would. I think that's a lot that she is in her head. a lot of the time, but I don't think she's affected by society like some of the other heroines are.
I agree. I think she's 0% Slytherin, right? She doesn't have that level of, you're right, she doesn't focus on status. And I wouldn't say she's particularly ambitious or cunning or shrewd. I can see with Hufflepuff, she is very trusting. I think she's loyal. And she's kind. You're right. Hufflepuffs are known for being the kindest house. So I can see Hufflepuff on that level. I think I can be convinced by that for sure. I think what I saw with Gryffindor is I just saw her adventurous spirit. And I think considering her humble background, I think the fact that she had that boldness to venture to Bath and not be intimidated and just kind of throw herself in the mix of society. I do think she has an adventurous spirit, and just the fact that she wanted to explore the Abbey. She has an adventurous side, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's her secondary house. I don't know.
I love that. That's such a good point. You know, she's really brave. She literally just like goes out and does things. I think the only time that she's slightly a little bit shaken is when they kind of kick her out in the middle of the night. But even then, I actually think it's Henry's sister who's more worried than Catherine even is. I think she's so bold. I think that's probably, I can see why you'd pick Gryffindor because of that. I 100% Ravenclaw for her main house, that curiosity, that open-mindedness, the fact that she's like so into reading. I remember when I did the Disney princess one of my like main princesses that I linked it to was Alice from Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Because I just think she's got that kind of, gets overpowered by her imagination sometimes. And I think that's very much a Ravenclaw trait. Like I can see a lot of Luna in her, less about like kind of the quirkiness and the individuality, but very much that she just gets focused on her own thoughts. I think the adaptations do a really good job of that, where it's like she'll just like start daydreaming about like if she was in a novel.
Exactly. I think that Northanger Abbey adaptation with Felicity Jones, is that her name?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Such a great portrayal of Catherine Morland. And I thought the connection to Alice in Wonderland was perfect too. So I agree with you. Her imagination and her love of literature and books is really the main feature. So we both agree on Ravenclaw.
Yeah, and I totally agree. The adaptation is really good. I actually remember in university, people would come up to me because we were doing Northanger Abbey as one of the books, and they were like, if I watch the adaptation, am I going to get enough out of it? I was like, yeah, there's this particular adaptation, and I think you'll really like get a grasp on all the characters if you watch it. It's a really good adaptation of the book. So
I really like the actor for Mr. Tilney in that adaptation too, but I digress.
Yeah. So true. Okay, so we're gonna go for Ravenclaw is the main house. I think I can I don't know. I can see both Hufflepuff and Gryffindor. I can see both. I think if we go off maybe core characteristics again, maybe it's that boldness, that courageousness, the fact that she's willing to step out of her comfort zone really does make her more of a Gryffindor.
Yeah, that's a good point to go back. So the external trait of Gryffindor is bravery, and the external trait of Hufflepuff is being hardworking. And then core value for Gryffindor is justice, and core value for Hufflepuff is fairness.
Oh, see, I'd say she's more fairness than justice.
Yes. It's so hard, isn't it?
It is really hard.
But I would put her more brave than hardworking.
I think that even though she is able to stand on her own 2 feet, I think she is quite led by other people, which I'd say is more Hufflepuff. Like, I think later with time, when she's reflected, she's able to be like, actually, I don't want to spend time with that person again. But in the moment, I think she's overpowered by some of the more Slytherin characters. Someone, I'd say like Isabella, who's very cunning, very ambitious, is able to sway her. John, her brother, is able to sway her. I think even the Tilneys, to an extent. I think Henry is very good at driving Catherine in different paths. And I think sometimes she can actually not realize he's being sarcastic, and he can be teasing her a lot of the time.
You're so okay. You're right about the naivety, and that is a weakness, a characteristic weakness of Hufflepuff, and being able to be influenced by others. Okay, I'm with you. I think let's do Ravenclaw primary, Hufflepuff secondary.
Yay!
Izzy just raised her hands in triumph.
So funny. Okay, so the next heroine on the list is Anne Elliot. A couple of things that I'd say about Anne: sweet, she's very nurturing, she's sensible, she's caring, and she's extremely selfless. But I think she definitely also has like her own, even though she's persuaded to start with, her mind doesn't waver from like her true feelings. She can be persuaded outwardly, but I think it's very difficult to change Anne's core beliefs, how she feels. She's got a lot of integrity there, I think.
Absolutely. I think she's so humble, modest, and this is in such contrast with her father and older sister, who are such narcissists. She's such a caretaker. She's patient. Think about how many people's complaints, illnesses, problems that she has to deal with. Everyone turns to her because she has this stoicism. And just like you said, yes, she's externally persuaded out of marrying Captain Wentworth, but internally she's so steadfast and she knows what she wants. She's extremely trustworthy, reliable. And when we think about her weaknesses, I do consider her kind of a pushover. I think everyone imposes on her. Remember when Mary wouldn't take care of her own son and went off to the party, and Anne is caring for Mary's son while Mary's at the party. And I think Anne was indecisive. She was young at the time. She was only 19, but she let Lady Russell convince her out of marrying the person that she loves forever. So
I love the way that you said that she loves forever.
She does. Okay, best story ever, right? Best love story of all time.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, no, I'd like to know what houses you've picked. Even though I've picked 2 houses, I think very similar to Eleanor. I don't necessarily feel passionate about which house to put her in.
Okay. For her, I really had one house in mind, and I don't even really have a secondary house for her as much. I really put her in Hufflepuff. I think the reason I put her in Hufflepuff is how humble and kind she is, and how patient she is with everyone, how trustworthy, reliable she is. She has a very strong sense of emotional regulation, emotional control. I think she has the weaknesses of Hufflepuff. I think, just like I said before, people impose on her. She's a bit of a pushover sometimes, and she's indecisive. That being said, and she's very competent, and that's a Hufflepuff trait, someone who's hardworking and competent.
Ooh,
But
I love that.
but now I feel like I'm not totally doing her justice, because even though she's indecisive with regard to certain actions she takes, she does know her own mind. She knows that she loves Wentworth, and she is strong enough to reject when Mary's husband proposes to her, and she's strong enough to reject the advances of Mr. Elliot. So she basically rejects 2 other men when she's older, and she's 27, right, which is considered an old maid. Very, very old for that time. And yeah, I put her Hufflepuff. I think I'm struggling with the second house.
So I did put Hufflepuff, but also Gryffindor. And I think all the things you just said then are why I've went with Gryffindor. I think she's got fire in her belly. The rejections of the proposals, but also, do you know when she goes and visits her friend, and her friend tells her like about the true nature of Mr. Elliot, There's a couple of things about that I think make her really Gryffindor. One, her father and sister are like, why are you going to visit? I think her name's Miss Smith, but like, why would you visit someone with the second name Smith? Because they think she's really common. Anne really could not give a flying fig what they think, and she will go regardless. And I think she's got so much conviction for what she wants to do. Yes, she's nurturing, and it can be seen as a bit of a pushover, the fact that she looks after Mary's children, looks after Mary, but I don't think she'd do anything that she didn't want to. And I think that's because she's learned from the mistake of rejecting Wentworth that first time. I think it sparked more of her Gryffindor side, that she lost something that she loved so much by falling prey to her more Hufflepuff traits, that I think it kind of awakened more of her Gryffindor.
Oh my gosh, just as you're saying that makes so much sense, because you said that Anne reminds you of Eleanor in some ways, and we said that Eleanor is a Hufflepuff, but then is a repressed Gryffindor as a secondary house. And I see that with Anne now. I think Anne is a Hufflepuff, but she does have some Gryffindor qualities that are also repressed. But I think she enacts them when she rejects Mary's husband and when she's rejecting Mr. Elliot. Yeah. Oh, okay. Look, I'm with you because, and I think the reason she's not a Ravenclaw is when you talk about that level of individuality, independence, I wouldn't necessarily put Anne in that category. I think Anne's an amazing character. She's one of the most evolved heroines from start to finish. But yeah, I don't put her in Ravenclaw. I think.
Yeah. And I think the fact that she's so juxtaposed against her father and her sister, which I would consider both of those to be very much Slytherins, I think, again, that shows more of her Gryffindor traits, because she's basically the polar opposite to them. And I think Gryffindor, Slytherin are quite polar opposite when you consider all the houses in total. I'd put them kind of opposite one another.
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Not that I'm saying you can't have elements of both, like I was arguing for Emma, but... Oh no, you were arguing for Emma. You convinced me for Emma. Yeah, so there we go. We'll see. So yeah, so we're going to go for Hufflepuff main house for Anne, secondary house Gryffindor.
Yes. I think that's right. Yay! Agreement.
So we have one more heroine to do, and that is Fanny Price. So I left Fanny to the end because she's a bit of a wild card for me with my thoughts on her. Some of the characteristics of Fanny, that she is independent, she's modest, she's quite sheltered, she's shy. One of her characteristics that's quite negative, I think she's very jealous. And yeah, that's most of my things on the list for Fanny. I'd like to tell you my houses first, just so that we can right, okay, because I think it's just going to make it easier to shape the conversation. So my main house for Fanny was Hufflepuff, but my secondary house was Slytherin.
Oh, no way. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, my main one that was not what I was expecting. I'm so excited to hear this. My main one was Hufflepuff, and then secondary Gryffindor. So I think both of ours are actually controversial. I think everyone right now is probably going, what? Slytherin or Gryffindor for Fanny Price? Have you read the books? But can't wait to hear why you think that.
No, absolutely. So this was the one that when I was thinking about it myself, I got the most excited about. I have a very complex relationship about Fanny. If you listen to the episode that I did with Naomi, that was like Fanny Price or House Elf.
Love that name, by the way.
Yeah, I feel a little bit like she isn't my favorite heroine at all. But I think she's a really interesting character. I think she's really complex. And that's why Hufflepuff, Slytherin, you think they were polar opposites as well, but I think that she has elements of both, and this is why. So Hufflepuff is very much, for me, her strongest trait of a Hufflepuff is her loyalty. She is absolutely loyal to that family, 100%. And that was one of the reasons why I considered her a house elf, because it's unwavering loyalty to them. And she gets very threatened by outsiders. She's very dedicated to supporting them. She's very kind, and she is quite timid, which is, again, I thought more Hufflepuff. She's very driven by what they want as opposed to her own wants and needs. Yet I think she's also very cunning, very resourceful. She's very jealous. She is ambitious and very practical. And I think practicality is a very strong Slytherin trait. She is really able to make the best of her situation and make it work for her. So when she turns up, she's a complete outsider. And I think she finds the things that make it work for her. So she finds it in her relationship with Edmund. Obviously, she starts like riding. I think she's really good at finding her own, even in a bad situation. I think that's quite a trait of a Slytherin, to be able to do that, to make the best of even the worst situation, and make it work for them. It is more the kind of negative side to Slytherin that I think Fanny falls into that, and that's absolutely her jealousy. It's hilarious when I reread Mansfield Park and I see all of the kind of inward feelings of Fanny, where she's like totally like hating on Mary Crawford. And to be honest with you, Mary Crawford isn't that mean to her. She's actually quite nice to her. I think she's a bit patronizing to Fanny, but I don't think she's cruel, and she's not like a Caroline Bingley really like rubbing it in her face. She doesn't even realize that she likes Edmund more than just a Sibyllin. But Fanny, I think you can feel that kind of hatred towards Mary Crawford. And I think she goes back and forth with it. I think sometimes she's like, Mary's nice. And then other times she's like, but I want Edmund more than anything in the world. And I think it's that. In her ambition for Edmund, there is no shaking it. Obviously, she does get another proposal and everyone's like, why on earth would you not accept that? And I think it's not about kind of like her core beliefs like it is for a lot of the other heroines, where they're like, I've rejected this person because I want better for myself. Fanny is very much, I've rejected this proposal because I want Edmund. Her entire drive is about him. She's just like, she just wants to be with him like all the time. Like I think she's slightly obsessed with him, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think that's why she's a bit more of a Slytherin.
So interesting. I think the argument that I think the most poignant part of that argument for me is her resourcefulness, the fact that Slytherins are good at making the best of whatever situation they're a part of and making it work for them. I think that definitely speaks to me. And I think you're right. She does have this one-track mind on Edmund, where she just wants to be with him, wants to be around him. Although, does she ever, when she's like that, does she ever think that she has a chance with him, though?
Mary, she even cares about that. I think she just, it's kind of a weird thing. It's not even, it's like a possessiveness as opposed to a love. It's like she's a house elf. I'm literally, she doesn't fall into a house. She is a house elf. Like she's just so devoted. It's like Dobby with Harry. Like it's
this is so interesting. So you view her as almost, I'm seeing it on your face, like creepy obsessive.
Yeah, a little bit, to be honest with you. I think the more I read Mansfield Park, the more I get that sense of her kind of obsession for Edmund.
This is so interesting because I think the lens from which I see things is I view her as sort of angelic in a way, but then you're right. She's extremely resentful a lot of the time against Mary Crawford. I think in her defense, I do think Mary Crawford is very patronizing. And I think she's patronized by the whole family, and that can't feel good. That's such an interesting
I've got another argument for Slytherin as well, which you've just sparked inside of me. Okay. Lay it on for funniest Slytherin. Okay, so I think closer to the end of the book, when she goes back to her family, she makes a lot of kind of snobby remarks. And I think had she not been the poor relative, if she'd been born into status, I think she would have been a Slytherin through and through. I think even though she's the poor relative in the Bertram house, she lives there for a few years and suddenly she feels this sense of superiority over her family. I think she still loves them and everything, but she then seems to look down on like their lifestyle and the way that they live, even though she's from that same lifestyle. And so I think the fact that she starts to believe that feeling about status, again, shows her more Slytherin traits.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. You've got a very serious argument here. Let's see what I was thinking about her. So, okay. So we both agree Hufflepuff. She has this moral conscience. She's focused on doing what's right. She's intensely loyal to Edmund, and loyalty is a huge part of Hufflepuff. She's patient when a lot of people, Mrs. Norris treats her horribly, and hardworking. I think I saw her as quietly stoic. And I put that she's more uncorruptible than anyone around her. It's so interesting to see your interpretation and then what I have written down about her. Weakness. I think she has some of the weaknesses of Hufflepuff in that she is kind of a pushover and can be naive sometimes. But then I put that she's a quiet Gryffindor, and she reminded me of Neville Longbottom a little bit, like shy and introverted. And so she doesn't stand up for herself when other people say mean things to her or treat her poorly. But I think she stands up to others with her moral convictions. Like she was the one who said, this isn't right about the play. Your father is not going to condone this. She really, for being in the position that she's in, the fact that she can stand up for what she believes is right is pretty impressive to me and shows a lot of bravery, I think. And it's a special kind of bravery. It reminds me of in Harry Potter in the book 1 where Harry, Ron, and Hermione are about to go face the three-headed dog, and Neville is in the entryway and he stands up. He's like, you can't do this. I think she has a quiet bravery, and she reminds me a little bit of Neville. Those were my thoughts, but I think I really was determined to see her as in this angelic Cinderella type way. But I didn't really think about her level of resentment.
So I think you made a really good point about Neville Longbottom and how Fanny Price reminds you of him because he's kind of upholds the rules in a sense. So the example that I think you used earlier was in Philosopher's Stone. I think that's like such a great point, but it also sparked another idea for me that I'm going to put out there to try and convince you of Fanny's secondary house being Slytherin. And that is, you can either see that she's like Neville in upholding the rules, or I thought you could see it from a Slytherin sense, and she's like Draco and the other Slytherins when Umbridge starts her, she starts like that policing group when she has the rules and she wants everybody to uphold the rules. And she says, if you want to be one of the students that puts that together, you need to join this group. And Draco and his friends and a lot of other Slytherins join this group, and then they're trying to, spy on the other students. And I thought you could see Fanny's, push to stop the theatre production as, her trying to uphold the rules, that she's literally like Umbridge. Her version of Umbridge is Sir Thomas Bertram, and she feels this desperate need to uphold the rules, which is very much a Slytherin trait. Like, I feel like they want to be the people that police the rules in many ways. I think Fanny's determination to try and stop it for Sir Thomas Bertram's sake could be seen as being another Slytherin trait, as opposed to a Gryffindor trying to hold up the rules in like a moral sense.
Oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that, but I love that. Yes, there's almost this control element to it. Like Draco joins that inquisitorial squad because he wants to be in control and he wants to suck up to Umbridge. And so you're saying that Fanny is sucking up to Thomas Bertram, and her way of pushing back is upholding the rules to maintain that control. Oh my gosh. Wow. I was not thinking Fanny was Slytherin at all. And now, oh my gosh, I need to go back and reread Mansfield Park from this lens. But I love this interpretation because I do think that Fanny Price gets labeled as such a one-dimensional character. Like everybody kind of refers to her as the plain Jane, simple, just kind of vanilla character. And I think that this adds such a dimension to her character and makes her such a more dynamic character, even if it's a little bit of a streak of evil, kind of. Maybe that's too harsh, but I think you see this calculated side to her that's overlooked by a lot of people. I feel like I'm going to have to stick with my Hufflepuff Gryffindor combination, but I'm so intrigued and I'm seeing how passionate you are about this. I think I was going to reread Emma next, but I think I'm going to reread Mansfield Park and be observant of that and try to see Fanny through that lens, because I think you're picking up on something that I didn't see.
I think sometimes I worry I'm picking up on something that nobody sees and is not even there, that I just have some sort of enrooted dislike of Fanny and I'm just out to get her.
You're not the only one. I feel like a lot of people are not huge fans of Fanny.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, reread it and just see if you can kind of see the elements that I was saying. I think she fights that side of her, absolutely. But I think it's there. And I think it would be interesting to see who Fanny would have been in a different situation had she been born into wealth. I think she would have been a Slytherin.
I can see that with what she does with her current circumstances. I mean, so much of what defines her is that she just was born with nothing financially. So I think that could change things.
I actually think
I'm so excited to reread it now.
I actually think it's her situation that makes her a Hufflepuff, not her personality. Like, I think it's because she can't speak out too much. She has to have that sense of loyalty because they've done so much for her. Even if they are horrible, that's like her lifeline and they've changed her life. And I think she values what they've done for her in that sense. So I do wonder whether or not she's only a Hufflepuff because of her situation.
This is my next reread. We can follow up. I cannot wait to go back and reread it with this new lens. That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, do it. That is everybody. We've done all of the heroines. Oh God, that was so much fun though. I really enjoyed that. And I'd love to hear what people listen, like your thoughts, guys. Send us a message on Instagram. Me and Caily would love it. Like you heard, we like to be swayed. If you've got another argument, if you think people should be in another house, we want to know.
Absolutely. Particularly with Fanny now. I'm so intrigued what house you think Fanny Price is in.
I think to wrap things up, it'd be good to know what house you consider yourself to be in, Caily. Do you have a primary and a secondary or just a primary?
I do. So I took the Pottermore test and I was sorted into Hufflepuff. And when I talked to my friends about it, I would say half of my friends think I'm a Hufflepuff and then half think I'm Gryffindor. And I think that's right. I think I'm probably primarily Hufflepuff, but I have some Gryffindor traits as well. How about you?
That's so funny. I literally thought that about you myself. I was like, I think Caily's like a hybrid between Hufflepuff and Gryffindor.
Oh, yay. Okay. Amazing. Love that. It's fun. Yeah. How about you?
Pottermore. My primary house is Ravenclaw. And I do think I'm a Ravenclaw through and through. For secondary house, it's really difficult for me. I think maybe Slytherin, but then I have it's really hard. I think maybe Slytherin because of like the ambitious side of me. But I could see why I could maybe have a secondary of Gryffindor because I have a really strong moral compass, and then also Hufflepuff that I'm quite sensitive. So I was like, I don't know. I think potentially maybe Slytherin. Well, I don't know. What do you think my secondary house would be?
I immediately thought Ravenclaw. That's an easy one. And then secondary is a little harder. I would have said Gryffindor. I think you have a lot of bravery to you. But I also know that you identify highly with Emma. You've always said that Emma is your favorite heroine and that you really identify with her. And I see your ambition too. So maybe you're 3. Maybe you're just like Eleanor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But definitely the Ravenclaw I saw for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's hard to find my second one because I think I identify so much with a lot of Ravenclaw traits that I'm like, I don't know where to find the other, like the bits that I'm missing, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Well, this seriously, I think I've said this 3 times now, but this was a dream come true to mix Harry Potter and Jane Austen. And again, we would love to hear your thoughts. Please DM us. And yeah, I want to hear what everyone thinks.
Thanks so much for tuning into this 2-part series. I would love to know if you like this episode split, guys. So, drop me a message on Instagram, your thoughts on it. If you like the way that we split this up, obviously we had so much content to cover. Both of these episodes are normal episode length in their own right. And so we just thought we didn't want to be held back by the time constraint, in the sense that we could talk freely if we split it into 2. So that's why we did it, but I'd love to know your thoughts on it and if you liked it. And so you can find me over on Instagram at What the Austen, and I post on there a couple times a week, and I'm also pretty active on stories, so yeah, you can find me over there. And thank you, Caily, for joining me again. As always, it's been a lot of fun. Do you want to just remind people where they can find you?
Sure. So my Instagram handle is half_agony_half_hope. And yeah, I post a lot of Jane Austen quotes and quotes I love from other authors in literature and psychology. So yeah, so you can find me.
I love that. Thanks so much. And we'll see you all in a new episode. Bye.